Hello and welcome to another episode of Into the Afroverse with your host, William Jones. And Into the Afroverse is where we're taking Black people into the future. If you tuned in last week, we had Fred Quarter of Pockets Full of Pills, and it's a comic and art studio out of Manila, Philippines, and it's the only Black-owned art studio in the country. And for over a decade, he's brought his Lovecraftian dark comedy saga to life via comic shorts, and is now moving into augmented reality. He has a Kickstarter that he's currently working on, and he's here to talk about not only his work, but also in the context of Afrofuturism. And with that, I want to welcome back Mr. Fred Quarter. How you doing?
Doing good, doing good. I'm glad to be back.
Excellent. So the last conversation, you were just giving us this fascinating story in terms of how you guys started, and we didn't get an opportunity to actually talk about the product itself.
Right, exactly.
So once again, this is Pockets Full of Pills, a comic company and an art toy studio. Can you talk a little bit about the product, the motivations behind it? What kind of stories are you guys telling?
Right. So the name Pockets Full of Pills, as I told you last week, came from a poem that I did a long time ago. On the closing line of that poem, that was the most memorable. It's 40 years ago, we had hearts full of hope, but now all we have is pockets full of pills. And it was just this concept as I was doing drug counseling and therapy throughout my time at Howard University and Bowie State, that there was this sort of interplay with almost like magic and technology when it came to psychotropics. There was this sort of like element of this is around the time the movie Limitless comes out. This is around the time you see a lot of things in culture about the power of medicine, and I'm in it, and I'm seeing people with like these horrible situations going on mentally and physically, and the power and the horror of medicine, and it would seem like I was dealing with such a cosmic situation that, of course, it kind of leaked into my art. And I'm a big fan of sort of like Lovecraftian dark horror, and just sort of it all came together. And I sort of created this sort of multifaceted story told by different characters to sort of encapsulate, pun intended, this story. And I called it Pockets Full of Pills. I can give you a quick elevator pitch. Yeah.
Yeah. And where can people find it?
Oh, yeah, that's the most important. You can check us out on our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Pockets with an S, Full of with an A, Pills with a Z.
Excellent. So, and what types of formats So video, you said it was an art studio. What are the ways that you're getting this out?
So it started as a comic book, and we only do paper, just simply because there's more money in it. And when it's here in the Philippines, comics are like the most common accessible way to invest. People buy comics and then they get them signed, and then they trade and and sell them. So like there's a currency level to comics out here in Southeast Asia. There's a huge collector community. So that really kind of got me into sort of the preciousness of the artwork that is a comic book. So that's why we never really went digital. But what I started doing recently is we start releasing the comic books as actual YouTube motion comics. So we just released our first comic, volume 1.1 on YouTube. Check it out for free. We got a lot of amazing talent from voice actors from Marvel Studios, Netflix, Amazon, and a lot of amazing talent from here in the Metro Manila. So every couple of weeks we'll be releasing another episode of our story, so everybody can enjoy it. But it still sort of keeps the sanctity and sort of currency of the actual comic book itself.
Right. And like the last time when you were talking about your move to Manila, You talked about how there is the African diaspora that is in that part of the world, and many folks may
Oh
not be
yeah.
aware of it. So, in terms of Black culture and in terms of your experience living there, what has that been? How has that been, I should say, as a Black man living there? And what parts of the culture have you seen in Manila? Folks that may not know.
Oh man, so so everybody's got a Filipino friend, and it kind of gives them this vibe of like you're kind of black, you know.
Mhm.
It's sort of a tongue in cheek thing, but when you go to the Philippines, you realize, oh no, they're not kind of black; they are black. And I remember having this sort of contentious argument with someone about blackness. And the thing about being black is it's an artificial race. It's a race that we belong to, and I find immense pride about it, but it's artificial. Like
Mhm.
if you go back to Africa, which I have many times, we aren't of a specific tribe. In
Right,
Africa, there isn't a lot of race mixing within Africa because for thousands of years, I mean, they even mark their faces to say, I'm of this tribe. I'm going to marry into this tribe.
right,
They're all black, but they don't see themselves as black. They see themselves as certain tribes, certain nations. But of course, the slave trade did the unthinkable. It mixed us all up. So you
right,
have warring tribes that have no idea they're on different factions now having kids with each other. This is unseen in West Africa, but it's common in the African American household. And we have no idea of it. We do know that we're mixed up.
right,
Okay. So we'll have cousins that will look like phenotypically a tribesman and have a mother or a father that look phenotypically of the tribe that have tried to exterminate that tribe for thousands of years. And we have
right,
no idea of the irony of that table sitting, you know? On top of that, we had a whole bunch of whiteness mixed into us without any of our say so, you know, through
right,
the horrors of being enslaved. And then many of us ran to our brothers and sisters as Native Americans and mixed with them. All of us have Native American mixed into us. So what is it to be black?
right,
Black is a hybrid. There is no purity test for blackness. Blackness is sort of a statement of you are a product of the slave trade, and you
mhm,
have some percentage of black in you. That's why no matter what people say, there is no such thing as half black. You're
right,
black or you're not. The
right,
one drop rule is the reason why Mariah Carey and Samuel Jackson are equally black, right?
right,
So with that context, okay, of blackness, and you look at the Philippines, they're one of the only other races that have that as well. So you have during the first ice age, the first migration of African peoples coming out of Africa as humans. Okay, just
mhm,
a lot of different people came out, created Neanderthal. This is before when the human species had a lot of different factions. Okay, you had
right,
Neanderthal and other people populating Europe and stuff. But when the Africans that stayed in Africa and became modern day humans first left, they didn't go back the way that their earlier versions of humans went. They were in the middle of the ice age, and they basically walked off the coast of Zimbabwe. At that point, the ice came all the way down to England and all the way up to like Sydney, Australia.
right,
So the Indian Ocean really wasn't there. It was an archipelago of a bunch of little islands you could just hop across. So the first migration of humans just walked or swam or rafted across what is now the Indian Ocean into Southeast Asia.
right,
That's why you have black people in Australia. Some of the oldest humans on Earth
right,
are black people in Australia, right?
right,
But they don't want to connect the dots for you because that just sort of makes the black family too big, right?
right,
So now you have Africans that came across and populated Southeast Asia into Oceania, and then the Ice Age ended. Okay, water fills back up. Now you got a bunch of black people stuck in Indonesia, a bunch of black people stuck in the Philippines, a bunch of black people stuck in Australia. You got a bunch of black people stuck in New Zealand, Papua New Guinea. Just Google if anyone thinks this is crazy, Google Papua New Guinea and look at the
right,
people. That's actually like 1,000 miles further away from the Philippines, going
right,
away from Africa. And those brothers are black, black, black.
right,
Okay. So and when you talk to someone from Papua New Guinea, they identify as black. Okay. I
right,
mean, if they want to or not, they got mirrors.
right,
Okay. So so when the Spanish, okay, which were actually the Mexicans at that point in time, because Spain owned Mexico, so there's no need to differentiate. But when the Spanish folks came over, or the Mexicans came over under the Spanish flag and discovered the Philippines, the first island they named it, because back then you named things by what you first saw. They
Right.
called it Negros Occidental, which basically means Negroes in the Orient, or
Right.
Oriental Negroes. So Negros Occidental is the name of the first island discovered in the Philippines. And then the
Wow.
Spanish, the Mexicans kept coming over. So now you have the Spanish mixing in with the native black population. Prior to that, there was a second wave after the Ice Age of honored humans coming and sort of colonizing Europe, colonizing Asia, and then becoming Asian. Okay, then they become seafaring. They come down and they bump into these black people that have been there forever. Okay, so now these Asians are now part of the second wave of humanity, bumping
Right.
into the first wave that got isolated. They start trading with them. Okay, and now these Chinese people are under the emperor. A lot of these Chinese sailors go, you know what? I'm always going to be a sailor. There's no upward mobility in China. Okay,
Right.
so I'm not getting back on the ship. Matter of fact, I'm going to marry the princess of this tribe. And when you guys come back trying to trade them, for whatever and give them a BS price, I'm going to be the one trading now.
Right.
So then you have this first layer of Asian in the Philippines. They become Blasian.
Right.
And these Chinese people who become sort of the upper crust of society, because they're the ones that are the mediators between the rest of Asia trading with Black Philippines. So then you start getting the wealthy crust, sort of the hierarchy within the Philippines. So it's pure Chinese, Filipino becomes sort of the richest because they're the one doing the trading. They're
Right.
the one when the Chinese people get off the boat, they go, ho, ho, welcome to the Philippines. Ni hao, what do you want? Right? Then you get a mixture after that, and you get pure Black people. Then you have the Mexicans coming over later. Okay, and the Mexicans start, breeding with them, and sort of like, and of course these are the whitest of looking Mexicans,
Right.
but they're like pit bull. They're not really white. They're just light skinned. They're Mexicans.
Right.
So you start getting that mixed in. So you start getting these fair skinned Mexicans. You start getting Chinese people all mixed into an original Black stock. Now, what does that sound like to you? Sounds like African Americans.
Right.
But of course, when America first took over Spain, beat Spain in the Spanish American War, we got Puerto Rico, we got the Philippines. When America came over and looked at the Philippines, they categorized the people as Negroes. Now, mind you, Black people didn't go around calling themselves Black, because in Africa, we had tribes. Then after that, we got mixed around, and we weren't anything until the white man told us what we were. And the white man called us Black or Negro or African American, depending on what generation we're in. Okay, those same people that defined us owned the Philippines and originally called them Negroes.
Right.
So, if you want to use the most Puritan lens, there really is no distinction, except around the civil rights movement, they decided to stop calling them Negroes.
Wow. And what's always fascinating about these conversations. And once again, if you're just joining us, first of all, you just missed a ton of information. But if you're just joining us, this is Into the Afroverse with your host, William Jones, where we're taking Black folks into the future. And once again, we are joined by Fred Quarter of Pocketful of Pills Comics. And what's fascinating about this is they're all the folks that are, how can I put this, not interested in our well-being are always looking for ways to cut down our numbers. And they will use these terms, these barriers, this language to do it. And they just keep saying it for generation after generation. And ultimately we buy into it and we start to construct those barriers. And it works, to our detriment. So I'm so glad that you were able to explain it in the way that you did and really made it plain for folks out there that may question or doubt what you're talking about. So, and plus you're there. So what are you seeing? And I want to get to, more about what your company's putting out.
Right.
I just find it so
fascinating. Third
fascinating.
episode too.
Right? I know, right?
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry.
what are
Go
you
ahead.
seeing there? What are you seeing there in terms of African culture, Black culture? And let's tie it in that you're able to incorporate into your
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, so I have a lot of African friends of mine that do live out here. And a gentleman from Cameroon was telling me that one of the tribal languages, not Tagalog, but one of the tribal languages was almost every other word his tribal language from actually he was from the Congo, Central
Mhm.
Congo. And he was like, I can't understand Tagalog, which is the Filipino language. It's like, but there is, I think it was Visayan, one of the other languages. He was like, for some reason, I can understand Visayan using my mother tongue,
Wow.
right? So I'm like, that's crazy. But when you're here, just on the surface level, hip hop, basketball, singing, dancing, everyone's heard the Jabberwockies.
Hmm.
There's a reason why when you think Asian dancers, it's like Filipinos.
Right.
Okay, hip hop culture. They just had SneakerCon out here. Like these people, they haven't missed a step. Like they are the hip hop scene is huge out here. Matter of fact, we got a rap group called Bow Wow Clan, which is sort of like the new age Wu Tang Clan out here, and they did the
Okay.
original score for Pockets Full of Pills. So we actually
Wow.
just uploaded that onto our YouTube channel as like last week's episode, releasing Bow Wow Clan's Pockets Full of Pills theme song.
That's amazing. That's incredible.
Yeah, yeah,
And when you talk about, I don't want to gloss over the fact, we just kind of say it casually, that you have a studio there.
yeah.
Can you give us some insight into, the size of the studio, how it's run? Because once again, we don't hear about this. And what I like about these types of conversations and speaking with people like yourself, ownership,
Right,
that's the thing that stands out to me. So can you tell us just more about the studio itself?
right. So the studio is so I own the IP here in Manila and in the US. And what we do is I was kind of disheartened with a lot of the history in the Philippines because the Philippines is pop culture,
Mhm.
especially animated pop culture, is to the Philippines what mechanics are to Detroit.
Okay.
Okay. After we dropped that bomb on Japan, and Japan had no Hollywood, they
Mhm.
created anime. Anime was just an emergency response to get televised content to the Japanese. And
Right.
that's why anime from its inception was for adults as well as kids. And then from there, those cartoons went back to children, but then they still had an adult audience, and then you start getting this interplay of childhood slash adult, content that created the anime business. But after a while, after Japan got back on its feet and wasn't really trying to do the dirty work,
Right.
where'd they go? They went to a place that they had been many times through their exploits to the Philippines. And a lot of the anime in the 90s and 80s, most of it was being done in the Philippines. All the background, all the cleanup, all the cell work, and then it was shipped back to Japan and signed off on by major studios.
Right.
So even Hanna-Barbera, most of Hanna-Barbera's artwork was done in like basically sweatshops here in the Philippines.
Wow.
So even for comics. I mean, the creator of Star Lord, the original Star Lord, is a Filipino man. The creator of Bishop, Will Portacio. Bishop
Mhm.
was supposed to be. Matter of fact, Will Portacio tells a story about how he's working for Marvel, and and they told him, Will, we need a person of color to be on X Men because we're getting a lot of letters. So Will goes, okay, I'll make a person of color X Men. Creates Bishop, he turns it in, and they go, Will, what the hell? What is he? And he was like, he's me, he's Filipino. And they go, no, we said person of color. We thought you understood that meant black people. That we can't use the N word anymore. So
Right.
person of color means black people. So Wilson didn't have time to change the drawing. So he just colored Bishop a little bit darker, which is why Bishop
Wow.
has curly hair.
Right.
He's actually Filipino.
Fascinating.
He just darkened him a little bit. But he still is visually identified as black because you called him black, which just
Right.
shows a Filipino man drew a Filipino man and had to call him black, so just made him a slight bit darker. And nobody picked up on the fact that he wasn't quote unquote black until
Right.
Will Spectacular told the story, right? So there's
Wow.
no like visual difference between the groups. But so the Philippines has been making art for years, like because before like really deep, complex mining, this is a volcanic island. They didn't have any resources. It had
Mm,
people, and those
right.
people were extremely talented. So people output is the original and OG natural resource of the Philippines. And they've been drawing the Smurfs, the Snorks, the X-Men for years. You hit a rock and you're going to hit somebody in the head that drew your favorite cartoon, but
Right.
didn't get any credit for it.
Wow. You know, this is so fascinating. And once again, what I'm really appreciating is, I'm always looking for ways to incorporate um, Afrofuturism, art,
Right.
creativity, and history.
Yeah.
And through this conversation, we're getting all of that, So I'm sure folks out there that are listening can really appreciate it. And one more time, where can they find your work?
They can find it at Pockets Full of Pills. That's Pockets with an S, Full with an A, Pills with a Z. They can find us at on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And you can actually find our books at Bowie Town Center on at Ethnicities Comics or Comic Odyssey or a comic, yeah, Comic Origins and
Excellent.
at Bowie Town Center.
And in terms of the content of your work, what is it that you're contributing to,
Right.
the greater society, if you will?
Well, our story is it's there's no good guy, there's no bad guy, there's no main character. As I was doing psychology, I realized that the whole pop culture theme of good and bad is flawed. And it leads storytelling is how you heal a society. I mean, that's why the griots did it. That's why Aesop fables did it. That's why the Greeks did it. It was about telling stories in a way that people lowered their guard enough to absorb it. Right. But
Right.
our major stories are framed in a way that are almost what regular conversation is, which is supposed to make people feel good. Stories are supposed to give you hard hitting lessons when you don't realize you're learning it, right?
Right.
I feel like storytelling was doing a disservice because there are no good guys, there are no bad guys, there are just bad situations and ways of dealing with it. Because everybody is a good guy and a bad guy, and
Right.
depending on the framing. So why not tell an interesting story and let the story be its own villain and let the people inside of it sort of like coexist within
Mhm.
it? There are no beginning, middle, and ends in stories. That's not how life works. The stories
Right.
supposed to represent life. If stories are, you have the hero's journey. The problem is everyone doesn't go through a hero's journey, but
Right.
everyone has a story, right? So you
Right.
create stories that are so sterilized and formulaic that they no longer do the service that they're supposed to do, which is get your guard down, entertain you, and teach you a lesson that you can use in your own life. But if it's so removed from your life experience with formula and titles, you're not going to get that. So
Right.
I wanted to create a story that was as fantastic and as interesting and as engaging and as otherworldly as any of the great stories out there, but not label things but make it authentic so it feels like your friend just ran back into the house and said, "You won't believe what happened to me," and tells a
Right.
story. And that's what Pockets Full of Pills I strive to do every time I put pen to paper.
Excellent. And has, when I have creatives like yourself on, I always ask this question. Have studios, and since you're in the Philippines, have studios anywhere in the world reached out to you? What's next for you and your company?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of interest from major studios, and I won't go back
Right.
and name them because some of those things are still open ended.
Of course.
Um, but but we've charted our own path because a lot of the studios want you to sort of hurry up and wait.
Hmm.
So we've been cranking out books. So we have 15 books now, and we're by the end of the year we're going to be dropping our 18 books. And we're actually probably before the end of the year, in a couple months, we'll be releasing our last chapter. Each chapter of our story is 3 comics, and that's why we started our YouTube channel. And I got really into how do I bring value to comics that people have already bought, because
Right.
comics are stories, and you want them to be dynamic. And I feel like once someone buys a comic, other than collecting it, it's done.
Right.
So what we did is we're going back and we're augmented reality hosting and animating all of our comics. So not only are we
Okay.
making a show out of it, we're turning the actual footage from our show and putting that into augmented reality, and then giving out free QR codes to anyone that comes to ask us online or catches us at a Comic-Con. We're giving them free stickers that activate their entire books. And they don't have to download any app. There's no additional purchase, but their books move.
Excellent. And will you be back in the States anytime soon? And if so, where would folks be able to find you?
Yeah, so our first show back in the US is going to be at Five Points Festival in Brooklyn. So we actually do art toys for our toys too. So we turn a lot of our characters and character scenarios into fine art. We do limited edition resin and vinyl toys. So we're going to be at one of the biggest art toy like cons on the East Coast, which is Five Points Festival. So we'll be there, and we have a few more cons that we're going to be at. We typically are at Baltimore Comic Con and Awesome Con. I don't think we're going to be able to go this year because our schedule's kind of wonky. But just check us out, and we can do online purchases as well.
Excellent.
We ship worldwide. Yeah.
And just like the last time, with all this information you've given us, this great content you've given us, the time has flown by. But I want to give you an opportunity in a minute or so. Any final words, any final thoughts that you would like to share with our audience?
Yes, I have to give you my elevator pitch.
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Okay. All right. I have to get a little water in here. All right. Okay. So the story revolves around the work of Dr. Rashida Johnson. She's a Filipino-American neurologist. Her boss asked her to make a neuroenhancing medicine for the U.S. military. She makes it, and it works. But her boss wants more, because behind her back in our prequel, they start purifying it on these poor little clone monkeys until they make it so strong it's got a new accidental side effect. It now allows a taker to see another dimension. Now, what I forgot to mention is her boss happens to be the CIA. In the dimension, they find a little place called hell. They don't get religious, they get nervous. Long for China, Iran, Russia realizes hell is real, but more importantly, that Satan is pure renewable energy. So they do the only logical thing. Got to find a team of Americans to break into hell, to kidnap the devil for American energy domination. And that's just the beginning of our story. It gets crazy after that. There's no good guys, no bad guys, no main characters like life. Just characters making choices that lead them straight to hell.
Wow.
That's it.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm sure folks out there, they're hearing that, and I'm sure they want to hear more. So you heard it, folks. Pockets Full of Pills. Make sure you go check them out on various platforms. One more time, remind us where we can find you.
You can check out Pockets Full of Pills. That's pockets with an S, full with an A, pills with a Z, all one word. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And check us out on YouTube, especially now because we're releasing a lot of new footage. We have all of our comic books are going to become YouTube shows. We're turning our comics into like 15-minute episodes. And we've been so lucky to have actors from Marvel Studios, Netflix, Amazon Studios, and a lot of amazing Filipino talent from here in Metro Manila voicing our characters. So yeah, it's a great time to sort of check in on us, and we appreciate every view, every like, every purchase.
Wow. Well, brother, I just want to thank you once again for joining us here on Into the Afroverse. We're taking Black folks into the future. Just an incredible interview. I've gotten so much from listening, and I'm sure that folks out there that are listening got a lot from it as well. And leaving the door open, as your company continues to grow, and I can just see the success coming, want to invite you back anytime you want to talk about your latest project or your latest work.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So that'll do it for Into the Afroverse with your host, William Jones. And Into the Afroverse, where we're taking Black folks into the future. You can find us on YouTube, on the Afrofuturism Network, and you can also find us on social media, and you can also find us on the website, afrofuturismnet.com, for those of you that want to support what we're doing here on this station. Thank you so much for tuning in. Truly appreciate it. And a special shout out to Mr. Duke Productions for producing today's episode.